Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hardwood Nations podcast with your boy CL Anthony and my main man Bryce Ward. What's going on, Bryce?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So we
Nice.
had a lot of trades Thursday.
Yes.
A lot of trades in the NBA, couple of surprise trades. One trade that was 50-50 surprise and 50-50 relief, and that was James Harden and Ben Simmons finally being swapped for each other. Um, we started this NBA season speaking of a Ben Simmons Kyrie Irving swap because at the time we didn't know that James Harden was growing disgruntled within the Nets organization. And we kind of talked about this a little bit last week when I mentioned where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, apparently I was right um, because they did get swapped for each other. What was your initial reaction when you saw that the trade actually happened?
I was just glad we didn't have to wait all day or for the off season for it, because to some of us it made some sense. Um, I always thought it was going to be Kyrie Irving until just recently. Um, but in hindsight, some of it makes sense. It was Kyrie's idea to even go to Brooklyn in the first place, so he clearly wants to stay there. Um, the rest of it just doesn't seem to matter to him, which is, that's fine. That's another conversation. So it makes sense that a disgruntled James Harden, who's been trying to find ways to keep himself out of the lineup, supposedly is, just get rid of him. And so we've said all season, you swap your problem for a problem. So the Ben Simmons for Harden at the time made sense, I think, to us. So I don't know exactly how surprising it was. I was just glad to see it get done on the trade deadline day and to get done at a decent time. So we want the rest of the stuff could start falling because some of that stuff is people kind of hold their cards close to their chest until maybe one or two moves are made. So it seemed like the chips started falling fast that day. Um, I'm not too surprised. I'm a little surprised that Harden's really not found a place to stick at yet. I know he tried in Houston, but to no real success. So let's see what happens in Philly. On paper, they still look really good. You have the reigning lead for MVP right now, Embiid playing out of his mind, and Harden needs to come in and fit in with the team the best he ever has. He doesn't need to come in and make waves. He just needs to come in and do what they've asked him to do. And, I think they should be able to have a decent playoff run together. But if Harden's healthy and if Embiid's healthy. But I'm not necessarily surprised. Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised because I told you a couple of weeks ago this might actually happen because the events lining up just didn't seem right with what the news outlets were reporting that Harden wants to stay and he told Brooklyn he wants to stay, but that wasn't in line with the stuff I kept hearing. And I thought it was interesting that the NBA clique of writers were split 50-50 because there were a few writers who thought, okay, this trade is going to happen. They're absolutely talking. And then there was others that were like, no, it's not going to happen. It doesn't make sense. So I was tending towards it's going to happen by virtue of James Harden coming up with mysterious ailments, um, the Nets threatening to file a tampering claim against the 76ers, which still could happen. Um, and then just all the stories about Harden being disgruntled, as well as his play, which started off rough, then he caught fire, then it kind of tapered off a little bit. Apparently, when he was rehabbing from this hamstring injury, he was actually in Vegas having a good old time. It's like you can't hide anywhere in today's social media age. So it's just like I'm like
Yeah,
he's
that's that's kind of like his MO now. I mean, we know Harden's going to have a good time whether or not he's in basketball shape or not.
right, right.
I
But
mean, that has nothing to do with it. The strip clubs in Philly about to get paid.
yeah, they're gonna be popping, man. But it just the things lining up just seem like I think that he told the Brooklyn Nets because of course he didn't want to be the bad guy. I think he told the Brooklyn Nets, I don't want to be here. Make the trade. Philly was probably in his ear all season. He has a lot of connections to Philly, of course, and that's where the
Mhm.
tampering charges are going to come in at. Because I mean, here's my thing: if you're going to complain and say this team tampered with my player, you don't have to complete the trade with them. If he wants to
Right.
go out, you can trade him somewhere else. So I don't necessarily buy what the Nets did because, like I said, if you're running, all right, I'm a Heat fan, you're a Magic fan. So let's say if I'm tampering with one of your players, let's say Jalen Suggs, I wouldn't expect you to make a trade with me because I think you would be pissed that I'm tampering and trying to take your player. Am I correct in saying
Yeah.
that? Okay. And vice versa. So, like, let's say if you were trying to get Bam off my team and I found out about it, I'm not going to trade Bam to the Magic. Get the fuck out of here. I'm going to send him to Sacramento.
It seemed like damage control on Brooklyn's part before they decide to pull a trigger on it. I don't think there's going to be any real consequence from it.
I mean, nobody gets in trouble for tampering anyway. It just doesn't happen. Everybody tampers. That's nothing new. The
Mhm.
whole league tampers. You might lose a draft pick or lose $5, $10 million, but that's it. Nobody gets in trouble for it. But with that said, Ben Simmons is going to be a net, and they need help. They need help. Now, I will say, I know they're battered. I know they're bruised. I know their egos are hurt. They're like a wounded dog that came to Miami last night and played the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and they actually made it close in the fourth quarter. And it was my first time watching Kyrie Irving play all season. He scared me a little bit. He scared me. They were down 21 and they marched back and came within 1 point in the fourth quarter. And Kyrie was spectacular. With that said, with Ben Simmons now in net, with Andre Drummond now in net, and also the underrated Seth Curry being in
Steph
net,
Curry.
I know you mentioned a little bit about Joel and Harden, the team up, and we'll dig into that a little later. How do you think who do you think won this trade, the Nets or the Sixers, as far as this season?
Mm, as far as this season, Nets, because they needed more than just one guy. They needed a couple guys. It didn't seem like they were deep at all. So it's not like I wouldn't want Kyrie and the Nets to do well. It's not like that's not realistic. It's just we've had doubts about those two guys, meaning Kyrie and Durant, and then becoming those three guys, adding Harden to it. We had our doubts about them putting it all together at the same time. It's not like Kyrie can't go out and ball. I don't know anybody who thinks that he can't still do that if healthy. Kevin Durant still go out and be the best scorer in the league. They needed some depth on that bench, like reliable depth. Andre Drummond's nothing special, but to have just someone there, a big body, you have to have that, especially on the East right now. I feel like there's just a few things that I liked that the Nets were able to get. The only problem is I don't believe in Ben Simmons at all. That's why I said for this season, it's like we'll just see what happens because I don't know if Harden can just go in and add to this Philly team that's not been playing bad at all. Like I don't know what that turns into. The Nets, I feel like it's easier to just throw those guys in. Ben Simmons is a huge question mark because he hasn't really played all season, and you need him to come out and be the playmaker, the point guard. So he has to learn how the team plays, all that. Ben Simmons is still the biggest question mark to me. All the rest of it is solid and seems very upfront with what you should expect. Seth Curry and has been playing decent all year. Andre Drummond's just a backup big. Um, but the availability for Kyrie to just score now, I mean, that's going to be slightly different than what we've seen in the past. I think so. I hope he can stay healthy, and I hope we get a lot more Kyrie. But still, we're not going to get to see him in home games. So, what are the Nets going to do until Durant's still not back, right?
Correct.
So what are the Nets going to do now that Harden's gone and Kyrie can't play home games? What are you going to do in the home games? You rely on Ben Simmons? Nope. I mean, not realistically, not in my eyes, not this season. Ben hasn't built that confidence back up yet that you can rely on him. So what do they do at home games right now with Kevin Durant out?
Right. Right.
So I don't know. That's a real tough question, but I think they both kind of came out even. I don't know which one is necessarily better right now because they were both. I think Philly's still better because I thought they were better to begin with.
They did have a better constructed roster, and I mean they're going to take a slight hit. And Andre Drummond was given good minutes behind Joel Embiid, by the way, and actually might have been part of the reason why Embiid has relatively stayed healthy this year because
Mm,
he hasn't played heavy minutes. He's gotten off the hot starts, and then he could come out the game for a little while because Drummond was his backup.
yeah.
Um, One thing I'll say is I like the pairing between any great guard and any great big. I just love it when I see it, and we haven't really seen it in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I will caution two things. Every year in the playoffs, there's always an issue with Embiid. Every year in the playoffs, there's always an issue with James Harden. To be blunt, and I respect their games, but to be blunt, they both have failed in the playoffs when they've been like higher seeds. And I mean, James Harden has just disappeared completely. Embiid has had other issues around him that has happened, but it still falls on him because he's the face of the franchise. So Harden is the worst of the two as far as playoff performances. That's the only thing that kind of scares me with Philly when you have two players who are great in the regular season, but don't
Mm-hmm.
have any playoff success to speak of, like absolutely none.
They have to
So that
prove
kind
it.
right, that kind of scares me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. Also, with this MVP march that we both agree with Embiid, with this MVP march that he's on right now, Harden has to relent a little bit. So Harden's numbers are going to drop just a little bit. Now, I think his assist is going to stay the same, but his shots are going to drop. Excuse me, um, which coincides with his point total dropping because you can't come there and try to be the dominant ball handler. You just got to come there and dump it into Embiid. You have to be option two. Um, because you don't want to mess up his progress right now. So I think both teams have things to figure out. Ben Simmons hasn't played basketball all year. He's probably going to start playing after the All Star break. Then Philly has to figure out, okay, you got Embiid, you still got Tobias Harris, and then you got James Harden. I think Harden has to be the third option there. And I think that was part of his problem in Brooklyn for a little while. But he loves the GM and apparently he loves the owner, so that might give him some incentive to do what's needed for him to do. But I think he has to be the third option there. What do you think about the growing pains of Philly? Like, do you think he has to be the third option, or do you think he's going to try to be the first option?
Um, in my eyes, just like off of pure scoring talent and ability, I would say number two option behind Embiid. But but with that said, I was going to ask you if you think Tobias Harris can deal with what could open up with him on offense. Because in my eyes, you let Harden bring up the ball, you throw it into Embiid on the paint, and you let him do what he needs to do. And on the off or on the times where he gets double teamed and he's ready to pass out of it, last night he had a triple double. We know he's not afraid of passing and controlling that offense when you get him the ball. Is Tobias Harris going to be the guy who can make the most of being open? Because you can't let James Harden sit there on the 3-point line open. So
Should
I think James Harden should be the threat of the two, but I feel like Tobias Harris really has to be reliable on making his shots and doing what he can do when maybe Embiid gets double teamed and Harden keeps his defender on him. Like someone's going to get open.
yeah,
So who is it going to be?
shooters are going to shoot, and we know Tobias Harris is a shooter. But there's also Danny Green on the team. So Embiid actually has three options to throw the ball to. You can use Harden as a decoy because one of those three guys are going to be open throughout the
Mhm.
game. Harden, Danny Green, Tobias Harris. This is going to be an old school inside out offense, which kind of been that way this year. But it's going to be an old school inside out offense. Pound the ball inside, kick it out, rotate. That's what it's going to be. And I think Tobias will make the shots. Danny Green is so-so. Some years he's good, some years he's bad. Harden can actually ball fake, catch the ball fake, step into the mid range, and then you got two options: pull up at the free throw line, or dump it right back down to that monster you got in the
Yeah.
and that's what I would tell Harden to do. So the other two guys fire away from the 3 point range. But now if it comes back to Harden, ball fake, look, shoot one or two to keep the defense honest. Ball fake, hit the mid range. The defense is going to collapse. Once Harden hits the mid range, defense is going to collapse. You got Embiid, you still got Harris, and then you got Danny Green. So they have a lot of options now, but Harden can't be shoot first. He
I
can't be.
agree.
Yeah, to start the game off, look, this is what Miami does. To start every Miami Heat game, they get the ball to Duncan Robinson to see if he can make a couple of threes to stretch the defense out, to keep the defense honest. Then Bam and Jimmy kill him on the inside. Early in the game, Harden has to jack up a couple of threes just to keep the defense honest and say, hey, I can still make a three out here. But then after that, just feed that monster on the inside and help him get the best MVP award that we've seen in a couple of years. Sorry, Jokic. You stole it from Embiid last year. But I think Philly might have something. I think long term the Nets won the trade this season. I think Philly won the trade, which they're in win now mode anyway. Um, because I know Harden's $200 million contract extension is looming, and I think at age 32 or 33, that's going to cripple that franchise going forward. As far as bringing in additional help, they're going to have to go
Mhm.
the Lakers route and bring in minimum contracts, and we see how that's been working out for them. So, um, long term, Nets are going to be better. Right now, Philly's going to be better. Last question on this: the Heat, the Bulls, the Cavs, and the Bucks are all ahead of Philly in the standings. I'm not even going to mention where the Nets are right now with their 11-game losing streak. Do you think this propels Philly to the top of the conference, or do you think the conference is going to stay the same right now?
I don't think it propels them to the top of the conference. Those other teams, it's not like fluke winning. Those teams have been good all year. I don't see any of them really falling off right now. I don't think Philly's just going to skyrocket through the standings, which I don't know if that's like really good or bad for them playoff wise, who they get matched up with right now. But if I'm Philly, the way Embiid's playing, I don't feel like I'm afraid of anybody. But with that being said, I just don't see him going too far up the standing ladder. Um, Real quick, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the Doc Rivers and Harden coming together situation? Because that's one thing I don't think we've talked about yet is how we think those two might be able to work together. Because Doc Rivers being there is kind of like a big deal in a coaching sense, of course, because he has championship, um, experience as well. Clearly he didn't mesh well with Ben Simmons, and I'm not saying James Harden is Ben Simmons, but I'm just saying he seems to have a sort of chip on his shoulder and an attitude no matter where he goes. And so, do you think those two work well together, or do you think there'll be issues from the start just because Doc Rivers can rub some players the wrong way?
I think they'll be fine together. Doc Rivers rubs soft players the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, he's a player's coach. He played in the league for a long time and played under some
Mm-hmm.
great coaches. Um, so I think those two will get along well. I think the only thing that Doc Rivers is going to expect of James Harden is to be in shape. That's it. That's literally, and he's not fat. He's just
Yeah.
a little soft. You can look at him. He's a little soft guy. He's a little gut now. When you get older, you have to be in prime shape. Like the shit that Luca's doing now and the shit that James Harden was doing, you can't do that. Look, okay, for example, Luca, look at James Harden. That's your future. Okay, chill out.
Hmm.
The older you get, it's harder to lose weight. Trust me, I know. It's harder to lose
Well,
weight.
also it can just add to how easy it is to get injuries.
Right, right,
I
right,
mean, you can't just turn it on like you did when you're 26 and there not
right.
be any consequences. Yeah, you might be able to lose that weight and do what you want to do, but your hamstring might be like, nah, mm-mm,
Hmm.
that's out of your control. So I
By the
just think
way,
if you come in and you're careful and you start off from a good spot,
mhm.
maybe you'll be all right. Like Zion is screwed. Zion's screwed. You can't do that. You can't come in like that. That's why I always like you said the Heat. They find people because you
Yeah,
can't. Goran Dragic came in that one year. They're like, dude, what are you doing?
yeah. I,
It
I,
and you pay consequences for it.
I think in Miami the body fat percentage and look, we know Kyle Lowry is a little lumpy now, but I think the body fat percentage is supposed to be like no higher than 3 or 5% or some shit like that. So I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure Kyle's eating a few fines behind the scenes. 'Cause, man,
Good.
he's a load, man. I'm telling you. But he got hips like a pregnant woman. That's what Charles Barkley said. And one of the Heat guys I listened to called Kyle Lowry honey buns, and it was just the funniest shit.
That's funny.
It was hilarious, but yeah. So I think that's the only thing that Doc Rivers will demand of Harden. It's just to be in shape, but he's gonna let him play and do his thing. Um, Look, Harden. 3 years ago we talked about this. I told you if Doc Rivers goes to Philly, Joel Embiid is gonna be the guy. Ben Simmons is not gonna be there anymore. Look what happened. Harden saw that. He's gonna know how to act. Doc Rivers in Philly. Trust me on that. So the Los Angeles Lakers, despite all the uproar from fans and media talking about my boy, trying to make him the scapegoat, a funny thing happened. Russell Westbrook was not traded. A couple of calls were made, but Russell was not traded. Um, the Lakers didn't make any trades, actually. So what they have is what they have. Now we both picked the Lakers to be in the finals and probably win championships. We can admit when we're wrong. We're wrong about the Lakers, but we're right about Brooklyn. So we're 50-50.
I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take that. Yeah, we'll take it. How do you think, as currently constructed, the Lakers can do, especially considering they played a tough Golden State team last night and took them down to the wire? And then also LeBron, I don't know what something happened with Michael Porter Jr. last night and a Puerto Rican and something, and I guess he called him Puerto Rican, but he's actually mixed. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it keeps coming up on my Twitter feed. I gotta watch that video. So LeBron tweeted after the game, "I'm sorry, Lakers Nation. The kid from Akron missed those free throws. I see the hate. Y'all keep that same energy when we bounce back and win the championship because I'm activating playoff mode 100." I don't think there's anything else LeBron can do this year because technically he's been in playoff mode all fucking year. Like he's been playing
Hmm.
fantastic. What do you think now the Lakers can do to challenge in the Western Conference?
Just get the most out of Anthony Davis, which doesn't happen.
Oh, shit.
Um, LeBron's just being a leader. LeBron's being the leader that we kind of wish Kevin Durant would be. All right? LeBron has experience being that kind of leader,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
He is just doing what he is getting paid to do, and you can't deny he's been great all season. If I was him, I would just try to use it as motivation to get my team pumped. He addressed the end of that game, said he was sorry. I'm sure he uses a lot of that as motivation. Um,
Mm.
I still don't want to see a healthy Lakers. A healthy Lakers team in the playoffs could still be dangerous.
Right.
Um, I know their record doesn't indicate things as much, and I get that. But they could still be dangerous. That's the wording I'll use, is dangerous, because a motivated LeBron, a motivated Westbrook, and then which we know he stays motivated. But the final piece of the puzzle is a motivated Davis,
Hmm.
and to me that's the biggest problem with the Lakers. There's things that add to it: the age of the players, the style that Westbrook plays based on the weapons they have. But the biggest critique for me is Anthony Davis, and I'll give him one last chance to kind of prove me wrong. But it has to be in the playoffs. There's no other time, there's no other place, and if he gets hurt, it's just another. It's a problem. It's not, to me anymore. It's not like an excuse where we can just write it off again. It's like this season, with everything that's happened, his injuries, his play when he's been healthy, it's been the same Anthony Davis that we're used to seeing. If he can't turn on the playoffs, then I don't know if I have any more hope for him. So I still think they could be dangerous. I just don't know if I believe in them to win a championship at all this year. But it should mean that we get to see great LeBron James, great Westbrook play, and hopefully we get to see the monster that Anthony Davis could be consistently for the playoffs. But I'm really skeptical about that last part, so we will see.
There was a couple of seconds in the fourth quarter last night when I was watching the game. I'm reading over the box score now, but there was a couple of seconds where Anthony Davis caught the rock on the baseline, and Klay Thompson. Klay's pretty big, but he's not Anthony Davis
Mm-hmm.
big, right? Klay Thompson ran up to guard Anthony Davis, and AD was apprehensive and driving. And I was like, I tweeted out, I'm like, this dude got Klay on him. Like, stop being soft. Like, you can go through Klay, right? And Klay is a decent defender, but he's not wide like Anthony Davis. Like, you catch that rock and move at that point. I, this is very interesting. I'm going to read this to you in real time, of course. We know LeBron's been LeBron all year. 26 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists. Monster game for him at 37, 38 years old. Russell Westbrook, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, and shot 53% from the field for the game. Remember all those people been talking shit. Oh, he can't shoot. 53%. LeBron shot, guess what? 33%. Okay? But his stat line makes up for that. THT, this young guy on the team that Laker fans love. I have no idea why. 17 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 50% from the field. Do you know he scored more points than Anthony Davis last night? So here's Davis' stat line: 16 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He did have 3 blocks, shot 38% from the field. One of my early critiques of Anthony Davis, even when he was with New Orleans, was he's not an efficient player. He
Mm-hmm.
could fill a stat line, but he's not an efficient player. What do you think
Mm-hmm.
about him being the 4th highest scorer on the team last night?
Well, he needs to be the highest scorer on the team,
Hmm.
obviously. He needs to be the number one option. So, I mean, it's just backwards. And it's outside of a few great games, it's been like, it's been hit or miss with him like his whole career. So
Yeah.
he needs to step up when he's really needed.
Where are the Westbrook haters at today? I don't. Here's the thing: if Westbrook has a bad game, people kill him. If he has a good game, you don't hear anything from them. Anthony Davis is a good guy. I get it, and people don't kill him, but he has to take some of this heat too, because LeBron is leaving it all out on the court. He really is. And me and you said earlier in the week, we actually think LeBron's the reason that Westbrook didn't get traded. Because if we need a dog in a fight, we're going to pick Westbrook over Anthony Davis any day right at this point in time. Um, and I don't know what else they can do to get him to figure that out. You have to take Westbrook's mentality and put it in Anthony Davis, and he'll be the greatest weapon that you have on your team. LeBron James, at his age, shouldn't have to do this all year long. It
Mhm.
isn't. He shouldn't have to do that. So he might miss a week for his playoff mode. He might visit some old friends in Miami, as my wife so eloquently calls it, the LeBron juice. Um,
Mhm.
so he can get through the rest of this season. But it's not fair.
Mhm.
It's definitely not fair. So another team that didn't make changes that I thought would at the trade deadline was the Orlando Magic. So it appears now that the future at this point in time is set. Wagner, Suggs, Anthony, Fultz, and Isaac when those two guys return. How do you feel about the Magic not making a couple of moves um, and sticking with this core going forward?
um, I'm fine with it. I was on the fence about whether or not anything was going to happen with Bolts, so that would have been the bigger move to me.
Mm-hmm.
There were rumors of Harris and Ross for like whatever we could get back kind of thing. So I didn't expect any kind of like big blockbuster moves outside of how they might have been feeling about Fultz in the moment, but I still could have went either way on that. So um, the fact that they didn't do anything big is not surprising to me because I wasn't expecting anything crazy with us this year. I think in my eyes we know what the core is going to be going forward. The biggest question mark was just the two guys who haven't been on the court. Um, but it's hard to trade that and hard to move that even if you wanted to because they haven't played. But like I said, nothing. The fact that very little happened or such inconsequential trades happen, that's kind of like what I expected. Very little for the Magic right now, considering where we're at, where two of our more intriguing trade pieces are at because they haven't played. So yeah, it made sense to me that we really didn't do much. So
Awesome. Um, I know the reactions were mixed. Twitter was kind of quiet. Facebook was a little
mm-hmm.
upset because there was a lot of rumors surrounding, Terrence Ross, um,
Mm-hmm.
Robin Lopez, flipping those for a couple of draft picks, and even Gary Harris. Now, you guys did cut Mike, Lord have mercy, Michael Carter Williams, but he hasn't played for you guys all year, and his heart isn't in basketball anymore. He's trying to be an MMA fighter. And then you guys acquired PJ Dozier and Bobo from the Celtics to relieve their cap space issue. The cash considerations that you guys received was about $3 million. Um, so you guys did do that to help out Boston. Bit of a head scratcher for me, but whatever. I guess the owners are friends. But I think I still think changes have to be made. The online disagreements that I saw this week was, is it year one of a rebuild or year 10 of a rebuild? Because you did have a couple of playoff appearances sprinkled in there with Booch, Aaron Gordon, and Fournier. So I want to ask you, do you think this is year one or year 10?
um, it feels more like year like 2 or 3.
Okay.
The old Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, those days they're gone. That was that
Hmm.
rebuild in my eyes. So the Vucevic kind of lingering kind of made it feel like it was all one piece, but to me, bringing in Fultz and drafting Isaac and then eventually Cole, that all kind of feels like its own separate thing to me. And I think because Fultz and Isaac really didn't get to play with Booch, even though they were there at a time together, it just feels like a separate thing to me.
Okay.
I forget how many years Fultz has been there now. It's been 3 or 4. I don't know. It's hard for me to remember because of the way he's been out of the lineup. Um, but I see like the Fultz and Isaac era kind of being a new time for us, and then Cole, Suggs, France. I feel like this is all part of that rebuild. So 2 or 3 years in, something like that. But we haven't gotten any real results because two of the big cornerstones of that is Fultz and Isaac.
Got it.
So it almost feels like we're already starting another one because they're becoming. And I know, I mean, I might get ripped for this. It's like, for me, they're more of an afterthought. It's like, I can't wait for them to come back, but I don't know how good we're going to be with them back. I don't know what they're going to be capable of when they come back. And I don't know how well this team's going to play together with all of those guys back. It doesn't mean we're just going to be great. So I don't know what they bring to the table with this team. But I consider it all one rebuild, like since they've been there. But it's starting to take on a different type of feel, and if they're not careful, they're just going to get left behind. So I don't know. It's kind of an odd point for the Magic. We made a couple shots, I think, at trying to get better there for a while with Vooch, Gordon, trying to change some things, and we had like a playoff berth twice, I think, the whole time Vooch was there.
Yeah.
So that just clearly didn't work out. We went through management like crazy. We had the wrong GM in there, so we wiped out all that. So since these new Milwaukee guys been there, like I kind of that's probably when I feel like that would mark the new rebuild. So when they've really been able to get their hands on the roster. It's just another tough spot for Magic fans, but I don't feel like it's year 10. I just feel like we didn't have success with the last rebuild, so it all feels like one big cluster.
Yeah, the future between the first trio of guys looks on paper, it looks pretty good. It does. It looks pretty good. I only question when Fultz and Isaac come back, somebody's going to be moved to the bench. And I'm not talking about Wagner, but Bamba, Wendell Carter Jr., who has a little contract. Maybe Suggs might be pushed to the bench. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to those guys right now who's been out there killing themselves every night. Um, so those are going to be some questions in the off season. But right now, you are what you are, and I do think the future is bright. So I can't wait to see those young guys blossom. Um, you
Same.
know, yeah. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up. But I have one more thing to mention. Last night, LeBron James, in a way, became the all-time scorer in NBA history because what they did was they combined playoff stats, his playoff numbers with his regular season numbers. I didn't know we were doing that. So because they combined those numbers, he scored more points than any player in the history of basketball. How do you
Did
feel
they
about
combine that with what Hakeem is number one, right?
no. Kareem is number one, and they combined the numbers. So they took the regular season numbers for both players, and then took the playoff numbers for both players, and LeBron passed Kareem. Um,
Mm.
so not on the individual season basis yet. That's going to be in a couple of more years. How do you feel right now about LeBron James scoring more points than anyone else in the history of the NBA?
Well, we've been saying this for a while. Despite his argument for the greatest of all time, he will go down as the greatest statistical player of all time. I don't think there's a lot of room to debate that. So this just adds to that legacy, and I mean, it can't be really understated. It's part of what's going to make him great long term. I mean, he already is great, but it just adds to that. Adds to his argument. It's undeniable. We don't even need to be having the argument as much anymore about whether or not LeBron James is this or that. He is what he is for us at this time, and Jordan is what he was at that time. They're going to be different, but him just breaking the all-time points is it's just something I don't think we thought we would see all that quickly, if ever. So the fact that he's been able to do it is just impressive. And he's not done, clearly. He's probably got a couple decent seasons left in him, so he might break just the regular season scoring record as well. But it's a little surprising to me that he did it in this season already. And when you combine it all, like you said, they did. So kudos to him. I really can't say enough good things about it, honestly. It's impressive. So
Yeah, I just text you the
mhm.
breakdown of the points so you can take a look at it offline. Because like I said, I didn't know that. I should have known, but I didn't know that they were going to combine the points and go ahead and crown him this early. But he's going to get the all-time regular season record as well too. Like I said, a couple of years from now, as long as he doesn't tear an ACL or anything right now, or an Achilles. Um, so that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Hardwood Nation podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share our content from our YouTube channel. We're on Twitter at Hardwood Nation, on YouTube at Hardwood Nation, and Facebook and Instagram at Hardwood Nation. Next week, we're going to have a few podcasts I got planned for us. So we might drop 3 to 4 podcasts next week to celebrate the NBA's All-Star Weekend and also the NBA's 75th anniversary diamond season. So you guys be safe, and we will see you soon.